When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. I got an old veteran to the podcast back on here. Got John Kennedy back on here, and I got Grant Felton. Did I say your last name, Grant?
Yes, sir.
All right. Grant's a new one, so he's a new victim here. We're gonna drag him through the coals here and make him not want to come back next time. But no, I'm just kidding. We're gonna have a good conversation about what's going on and see what's happening out there from the eyes of the guys out there in Axon. So, Grant, let's start with you first. Talk a little bit about where you cover at and kind of what your background is.
So I cover pretty much all the plains: Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. Pretty much where I live at south of St. Louis, everywhere west in a diagonal. And
Gotcha.
I pretty much live on the wrong side of my territory. It makes for a lot of driving, a lot of traveling, but that's okay.
I don't know. Yep. And that's it's a cool part of the world that you're covering out there in the mountains and in the high plains and stuff. It's a really neat part of the United States. So, well, Grant, glad to have you on here, and we'll look forward to learn a little more about what you see happen out there. We got John Kennedy. John, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Casey. How are you?
Not too bad, man. How's things down in Louisiana?
Hot and humid, brother.
Isn't that normal? That's a Tuesday, right? In Louisiana.
Yeah, I consider it hell on earth if you really want to know the truth.
I knew a guy.
But I was out in Texas this week down in the valley.
Oh man, there you go.
And man, they got it really bad down there. One day I looked on the thermometer on the vehicle I was driving, it was 113 real feel. So
yeah,
that was a heat index. So
yep,
that's one of those people down there in the southern part of the state. They got a good tan down there.
Yeah, for good reason. Yeah, for sure. Now I've got a friend of mine that lives in Mississippi, and he tells me, I know hot because I saw the devil sweating the other day. So that's a different kind of heat in that part of the world that I don't necessarily like to visit this time of the year. So it's you can keep it down there, John. That's that humidity and that heat is not anything I want any part of, man.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, man.
Yep. Well, John, let's talk a little bit about what you see happen out there in the world. We've got some sprayer stuff going on. We got pre-harvest discussions starting to take place. We got some crazy scenarios with weather that we see happening out there. We see some very dry spots in areas that were very wet a year ago, and we see some really wet spots that were dry a year ago. So I guess, John, in your travels, what are you hearing from your customers?
Well, pretty much here in the Southeast, we get product in the ground, seed in the ground pretty quick down here.
Sure.
In fact, we had some guys get some seed in the ground really early. It actually came back and bit them this year. Freezing the frost came through and kind of wiped them out on some corn, so they had to do some replanting. But for the most part, the crop looks excellent. All the dealers that I'm talking to, the growers that I'm talking to down here in the South, everybody's really, really satisfied with the way the corn and the beans are looking. Futures on cotton right now don't look great, but there's still a lot of cotton grown down here. Like I said, I was in the Valley, Texas Valley this week. got a lot of milo getting ready to be cut, have some corn down there just getting ready to be cut. The cotton did look pretty rough because they're not getting any rain. A lot of cotton was wilted down in that part of the world, but the farther north I came, the crop actually did look better. But I haven't been, far southeast. I will be going down there in the next couple of weeks in that Georgia, Florida area. But, down there, they farm pretty much year round the further south that you go. But for the most part, man, it's just been dry, hot and dry. Some parts of the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, over the course of the past couple of weeks have seen some rain that they were desperately needing to help with the hay and stuff up in that part of the world. But for the most part, man, it's just been hot and dry.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same story I'm hearing about everybody. And you talk to anyone out there and you see the same thing. Grant, where you're at in the neck of the woods, you're kind of in the middle of that hot and dry drought that gets getting all the attention. So I guess talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there in your neck of the woods.
Well, yeah, I'd say it's probably only getting attention because that's everyone's worried about, and they won't be able to afford their King Ranch, and only be able to get a Lariat this year, kind of thing. Just only won't get that 250 bushel, only going to get 200 kind of thing. But
yeah,
I think it'll be all right. I mean, the year started off kind of Missouri, the northern Missouri, Iowa, Illinois. We had them cold snaps, so some guys pushed it, some didn't, and then it just dried up, and then it's been a slow go ever since. We've gotten a few rains here and there. I drove through that southeastern Iowa. It looks awful. I don't know about Illinois. Kansas, northern parts looking okay for wheat. Pretty much southern parts going to be junk, I'd say.
Yeah.
But Montana, they're doing okay. I just talked to a guy today up in Great Falls, said some of the heads are about the size of his thumb. So that's going to be awesome. They're going to have a good year. And South Dakota, I think they're about done. It got pretty dry there, just like with everyone else, but I think they've caught some rains, and I think it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it just seems like the further west and further north that you get, things really start to clean up. And take a look at a state like Colorado, where so much of what they've got going on there is just they're not even in the drought monitor. It's all the way. I mean, they went from having epic drought last year to it's just there's nothing on the drought monitor for them. So it just shows that change and how fast things can change and what that impact looks like when it does make those differences and change. So it's going to be an interesting year for sure, especially looking at what's going on with crop prices and different news that are coming out there. So there's a lot of crazy things happening out there. All right, John, let's do this. So we're this kind of time of the year where guys are really starting to kind of assess what they've got going on. What they're looking at. They've kind of gotten a rough idea of where they're going to be at, starting to make some plans for the fall, what that looks like as far as updating equipment and looking at that year end, what they might have for potential tax issues and those kind of things. So I guess as you're working with your dealers and you're out there talking to them, what are you hearing right now as far as demand goes and how folks are taking a look at what they're looking at as far as upgrading equipment?
Well, I'll be very honest. I've had a very unfortunate turn of events over the course of the past month. I had some really good quotes to some of my stronger dealers on some equipment deals that they had going, and several of them fell through.
Yeah.
And Casey, there's just a lot of uncertainty out there right now.
Yeah, there is.
If guys are thinking that they need to spend some money right now, but it's like they want to hold off.
Yeah.
They really want to see what harvest is going to come out looking like.
Yeah.
Interest rates are up. I think interest rates on used equipment are hovering around 7.5% right now.
Right.
So guys, I talked to several of my used dealers and they said people just aren't going to spend that, they're not going to spend money when they're having to pay that kind of interest. So they're just holding off.
Right.
Anything and everything new, for the most part, in the larger equipment side, is pre-sold. That's
sure.
But as far as any extra inventory on large equipment, I don't see many people spending that much money, especially on the weekend. The weekend farmers, the hay guys, the hobby guys that buy these 50 to say 100, 120 horse tractors. Unless those guys are that group of clientele, unless they're making money with that equipment, they're not, just your little hobby farm on the weekend. These guys are not spending any money right now.
Yeah.
So for the most part, all the dealerships, every dealership has a small to medium ag sales guy and then large ag. But those small to medium size sales guys, they're struggling right now, man, because the everyday Joe who had that extra $500 to $700 a month discretionary money to go buy him a tractor, just the way the economy is right now, that discretionary money is gone.
Yeah.
And that's what all these sales guys are telling me, that just on that smaller stuff, the phone's not ringing and people just aren't walking in the door. So for the most part, I think the large ag guys, yeah, they'll probably have to spend some money. Here in the South, they got bit last year, man, because we were so wet during harvest. I'd say probably 75% of our bean crop here in the South got wiped out last year because of all the rain. We had
started up pretty wet. Yep.
So that bet a lot of them in the backside right there. So, from what I'm hearing, the people that you would normally think would be spending money this year, they're kind of gun shy right now. So they're holding off right now.
Yep. And that's a similar discussion I've heard with guys, especially when you're looking at some of the older used stuff in the Southeast and up into the central, what do you want to call the central grain belt there, just because everyone's kind of on eggs, pins and needles here a little bit, trying to decide what they're going to do and what things are going to look like. Grant, are you seeing something similar in your area, customers you talk with?
Exact same thing. They tell me people aren't just walking off the street with a pocket full of cash buying the smaller series no more.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are going to smaller series deers for their sprayers, which makes me kind of wonder in the future what the used market, because the used market's pretty strong for that smaller series stuff for the small farmers. I mean, there's large numbers of those guys, so it's kind of makes you wonder what the trickle down on that is going to be. Because when a Haggie's like $250,000 more than the biggest series 6 or 4 series deer, I mean, makes you slow down a little bit.
Yeah, when you're looking at used equipment, some of that 1-year-old stuff that we saw, that really took off and ran, there's going to be some situations where you have to take a hard look at what you're doing there and what those things look like. But I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at the overall aspect of some of the stuff, it's going to be interesting to see how things turn and how you hear a lot about these upgrade kits and those kind of things that are coming out, and there's new upgrade kits. Every manufacturer's got an upgrade kit for about everything now, and there's new levels of technology that you can add to those things. So it'd be interesting to watch how that transition takes hold and what does that look like moving forward. 1 and 2 year old stuff I think is going to be concerning, because it always is. I mean, it's not like this is anything new. You sit there and you play the 1 and 2 year old game and you look at where things are and how things are going. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to really having a good plan of what you're going to do. Same thing you guys do. You got to know who you're going to call on, what you're going to call them about when you get there. And I think a little bit of that art has been lost along the way here over the last 10 years, just because of the way things have been. As you're looking at how deals come together and the progression of things, it's just a different scenario than what has been in the past. And this, especially right now, this is a lot of this stuff is it's uncharted territory. When you start looking at some of the prices on the stuff, new or used, it's just a whole new thing and a whole new ball game, and trying to figure out how to put those pieces together is getting to be harder and harder. And that's probably not even the right way to put it. It's not harder. It's just requires more planning, I guess, is probably the best way to put it, and more data and those kind of things that come into play as you take a look at those things. So, John, when you're out driving around right now, what are a couple of the key things that pop up that are some of the driving factors behind what you've talked about?
Well, the main thing whenever I talk to people, like I said earlier, there's just so much uncertainty right now. Guys are trying to stay positive, but to be quite honest, I just let them know that we're there when they need something. Mm-hmm. You go out there and try to start pushing product. I'll mention some deals, like if we got some sprayer deals on some on some certain sizes. I'll mention that.
Sure. Yeah.
We've got some large earth moving tires that are on special right now. But generally, just get out and not really pushing product, just visiting with these guys and just listening to their issues. A lot of times they want to punch it back. They want to let it out on people. And so I think that's a role that, I'm playing right now. It's just lending an ear to these guys and letting them vent. Whatever they don't want to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And because you're right, it's a different dynamic out there right now, man. We're seeing things we've never seen before. I mean, there's always been ups and downs. I've talked to guys that've been in this business 30, 40 years, and they've always said that the ag business, the farming industry is like a roller coaster. It's had many highs, many lows.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in that low right now, but it's nothing like, it's a low off of nothing we've ever seen before. It's just a totally different dynamic right now.
Yep.
And people are kind of, sitting there with their hand on their hip, scratching their head, wanting to know what in the hell is going on right now with all this.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you approach them about that?
Yeah.
You just ask them how things are going, and whatever they want to talk about, but that's what we talk about, man.
Yep. That's, listen to what they're saying. Because what they're telling you a problem, and you got to figure out the problem for them. If you figure that out,
that's right.
Not to push product, the product sells itself. So
yeah, just let them know, if they do feel that they need to spend some money, we're going to try to save them as much money as we possibly can.
Yep. Grant, when you're out talking to you guys, you hearing a similar story, same kind of thing, where just looking at just different than what you've seen in the past?
I think the uncertainty is more pushing for everyone making a more informed decision,
right?
Rather than just who's got it in stock kind of thing.
Right.
Everyone's, looking at, we're focusing more on footprints and, okay, this costs this. Well, you get a better footprint with that, or, what's this going to do for my trade-in kind of thing. Everyone's more focused on making informed decisions.
Sure.
I think it's kind of more pushing back to that and just not just accepting this is what I got.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing too, is that I think some of this, a lot, and this is just my opinion, I think a lot of the stuff where people are scratching their head, wondering what they're going to do and those kind of things, we just came off of a 24-month, 30-month period where if you had it, you sold it and you made good money on everything you sold. And I had a conversation a couple months ago with a guy that was worried about a certain segment of his machine population that he had as far as used equipment goes. And I said, really? Well, how long have you had this stuff on your lot? Well, I've had this stuff on my lot for about a little over a month now. And I mean, it's just not moving. I'm like, man, come on. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, having something on your lot for a month and selling it, that was a home run. You did a great job. And now you had on your lot for a month and a half. I think some of the perception of how fast things had moved and now what it's moved to, which is probably back to normal now, is the same. And we're kind of back to the same situation what we saw back in 2018, 2019, where, we got to be creative with what we're doing, think about what we're doing. Guys saying no because you haven't really given him anything to think about yet. You know what I mean? Like, are you making my, first guy looks at his note and says, I got 2.5% interest on this note over here. And you want me to buy something different at 7.5% interest. And it's, almost twice as much as it was when I got the same thing last time. So then you got to start having those conversations about what's it look like and how you make those payments look and how do you structure things. And you just have to be considerably more creative than we have had to been in the past, 2.5 years, So I think that's one thing that's driving some of this thing. And another thing too is just some real world factors. Interest rates are something that people are saying. Inflation is something else that we're seeing. And then we've got, where we see, input costs they've come down a lot from what they were 2 years ago, a year ago, but they're still pretty elevated. You know what I mean? You're still break evens at 4.5 to 4.75, depending where you're at. 2 years ago, it might've been 3.50, 3.75. So different break evens and those kind of things are starting to play out in that too. So there are some real world factors that are causing some issues, but my personal opinion, I think some of this is just, man, the last one of these things we sold in from farm to farm, and I made a bunch of money. And now it's been out there for, a couple months or 30 days or whatever. And man, I don't have anybody interested in it. Well, maybe you don't, maybe you do, but I think back to your point, Grant, like you made a great point there that people are really making a lot more informed decisions now than they were, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
non-farm income's not there that was there this time last year because there's not the COVID money and the different CFAP stuff and those different things that are coming into play. They just don't have that influx of cash like they saw before. So it's a little bit of everything, I think, making some of these
we get some
under.
random trade war pop up and the corn drops to $4. We're going to be doing some thinking.
Yeah, for sure. John, let's jump back and take a look about this. So we're moving into harvest, that time of the year. Your guys down, especially down south, are probably right about that time for them to start really pulling those triggers and start doing that. Probably 30 days away from really doing some hot and heavy harvesting. If you're looking at doing some upgrades to your combine or whatever it is that you're working with, as far as tire goes, what are some of the things that people should be ready for right now, this time moving in that time frame?
Well, every year, around harvest time, we go into hurricane season.
Sure.
And if anybody's been watching the weather, we've got 2 fronts that came off the tip of Africa out there in the southern Atlantic right now. So the main thing that I would just recommend that people do is that here in the South, a lot of people own flotation tires and tracks. You got track machines, and then you get track combines, floater combines. And, my recommendation to people who do not have floats or tracks, give me a call if you have any questions, because 90% of the time, nobody is thinking about preparing until it's too late.
Right.
They find out, within within a week, we're going to get bombarded with rain and they need to be out there cutting corn or cutting beans. So that is really what I would focus on more than anything, is getting prepared. If you need to spend any money, guys, spend it on floats, spend it on tracks, even your track machines. A lot of these guys that buy track combines, they never address the rear of the combine. They think, well, we're going to be able to get out there and get our product out regardless with this track machine. But guys, if it gets nasty, yes, you're able to get out there and get your product out. But if you don't address the rear of that machine, you're going to tear your field all to hell and back if it gets nasty. And that costs a lot of time and money and wear and tear on your machinery trying to fix all that damage. So just flotation tires. That's my biggest thing. Go ahead and invest in a set of floats for the front, for the rear. And just remember that it is an investment. It's not it's not something you're going to spend money on every other year. I've got guys who've been running the same set of floats for over 10 years. Right. They have more than paid for themselves. So any upgrades, me personally, flotation tires on grain carts. If it gets nasty, you want that grain cart to be able to stand up when it's muddy. So here in my part of the world, flotation, that's what I would focus on.
Yep. So Grant, when your guy, I mean, it's a different area, different soil types and those kind of things. What are your points there for harvest as you look at those tire situations?
Just looking at what kind of problems you got, because across Kansas, across Colorado, you get them pockets of that big sandy stuff, and there's just different options for every different soil type you can do. And it's my first year going into harvest selling tires, so it's a learning experience for me. So we'll see what it goes through, because being where I grew up, small farmer, we didn't worry about tires unless you got a deer antler in it or something like that. Couldn't afford that fancy stuff.
Right on.
Just have the co-op come out and spray it, let them worry about it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Pull that trigger. That's right. All right, guys, that's good stuff. Before we go, John, any final thoughts about what we see happening out there?
Just, I ask it, everybody keep their heads up everywhere, anything from the grower themselves to the equipment dealers. There's a lot of heavy heads out there right now, and this day too shall pass, man. We're going to get through it. There's a lot of weird things happening out there that we've never seen before, but we will get through it. And just keep in mind that Grant and I and the rest of our sales team, we're there for you guys. You know, if you have any questions, concerns, you know, we do more than sell stuff. We answer questions. So just feel free to reach out to us with any questions or concerns that you have.
Right on. Grant, any final thoughts before we close things down?
Going into that too, what John said, even today there's a bunch of turnover, new salesmen, have them give me a call. They got any questions, here to help, because I've had a lot of dealerships, you know, you go talk to the manager, you know, he's like, I got 2 new salesmen on. We just had a lot of turnover. People are retiring because they're getting out of all this stuff. And just shout. I'll be more than happy to answer some simple questions, or because someone getting into it, they just don't know.
Yep. All right. One of my favorite parts of doing this podcast is that there's always that free giveaway, and Miss Page could make it on here to give us the pitch on what it is. So I've got it right here, and let me share my screen real quick if I can get it up. There we go. Share. It is this Axon Stanley Cup, and it's the same one that if you got one last month, sign back in again and get another one. Get 2, one for you and one for your wife, or one for your wife and one for your husband, however you want to do that. So check that out, get those coming. And if I'm not mistaken, you send the email to marketing@axontire.com, and they will get your information there, and they'll mail you one out in the mail. There it comes in. And I did get one of these. First one of these. I always forget to sign up till the next time comes around, but I did sign up for one of these because I don't think you can have too many insulated cups at your house. So I like to have as many of those as I can. So real quick, so I pulled this up too. John, if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I got your got it right here.
There we go. Get me on my mobile, 515-204-7170, or by email at john.kennedy@axontire.com.
Right on. And Grant, there's your stuff there, but is there another way you want to have people reach out to you?
Same thing. Just keep in mind, leave a message, because Wyoming and Montana and South Dakota, there is junk phone signal. So make sure you leave a message, because I won't even know you called sometimes.
Yeah, I live out where I'm living out here in Nebraska. You get a phone rings, and the voicemail comes about 45 minutes after the.
I just had a guy in South Dakota. It's been a week, and he called me. He's like, it just showed up. I was like, dude, I called you a week ago, man.
Yeah. That's a pretty common experience out here. So, well, fellas, I appreciate you being on the podcast. I look forward to seeing you guys in Nashville at the Moving Iron Summit, and we'll catch up then.
Sounds good. Thank you, Casey.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast. Check the video version of this out over on the YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related, and take advantage of Axon's special deal, which is you get $50 off of your Moving Iron Summit registration when you sign up. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Grant and John. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century.